Tonight, the Raps are back in action this weekend as the NBA and its players form a social justice coalition.
It's ridiculous that private sporting entities are doing the role of the state.
And the NHL playoffs resume tomorrow. The league postponed games for the last 2 days in solidarity. Plus,
the bench meant more than just a piece of art.
a valuable sculpture weighing over 220 kilos is stolen from a Toronto neighborhood. And
I've actually renamed it the 54 COVID East because it is packed all the time.
the TTC recalls 150 staff laid off at the height of the pandemic, but critics say they need to bring back more. Good evening, I'm Marivel Taruk. The Raptors will be back in action on Sunday after that protest by players forced a postponement to the start of their series against the Boston Celtics. The return to action comes after the league and the players announced new measures to address anger over racial injustice and police violence. Greg Ross has more on the day's developments, which started with the Raptors suddenly canceling a scheduled press conference.
Well, it was apparent that something big was happening behind the scenes in the NBA when the Raptors abruptly canceled their press conference this morning with head coach Nick Nurse and a number of other players. They said that they were waiting for some clarity on some statements, and not long after that, it was the NBA and the Players Association that released a joint statement. They said that the meetings they had the day before were both impassioned and productive, and that they led to an unprecedented joint coalition between the league and the players on a number of social justice and racial equality issues. Now, near the top of that list, a pledge from the league that in every city that controls the arena and property, that the governors of that team will work with local elections officials to convert that facility into a voting location for the 2020 U.S. general election. Now, they hope that that's going to help create a safe environment for people who live in places that are vulnerable to COVID-19 to come and vote. They also plan to use commercial time during the NBA playoffs to promote voter access in the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Now, why that is so significant is because there are so many people that live in marginalized communities in the U.S. that say they don't have easy access to voting. I spoke with Amira Rose Davis, who is an assistant professor of history and African American studies at Penn State University.
Voting is a real issue, and 2016 was the first election after the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, and we have seen documented on record the attempts of voter suppression, particularly suppressing the votes of Black people, of poor people, of people in urban centers, of college students.
The league says it's also going to continue to allow its players to use the NBA platform to promote social justice issues, something we've seen in the bubble during these playoffs. Players with statements on the back of their jerseys. Both the NHL and the NBA will resume their playoff schedules tomorrow. The Blue Jays did postpone their game yesterday against the Boston Red Sox. It was one of 7 games that were postponed on Thursday night. The Jays were back in action tonight. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Some tragic news tonight from Hollywood. Actor Chadwick Boseman has died. Among the roles he portrayed was the Marvel superhero Black Panther. Boseman was the first person of color to play the lead in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was just 43 years old. He had been diagnosed with colon cancer 4 years ago. Toronto police are asking for the public's help in finding a valuable bench that was stolen. The artist is internationally known for her life-size bronze sculptures. As Talia Ricci reports, it isn't just a piece of art. The bench also has a lot of sentimental value to the artist and the owner.
What can I say? It's like a bad dream. I could not believe it.
There are a few versions of Léa Vivot's sculpture, The Secret Bench of Knowledge, including one in Ottawa and another in Montreal.
The bench meant more than just a piece of art.
But the one police say was stolen from the area of Spadina Road and Strathern Boulevard just after midnight Thursday belonged to a family.
The sculpture was made specifically for the family. The bench was covered with beautiful messages. I think just like the owner, Marie Goldman and all his family, we feel very violated.
Police say the suspects removed the 500-pound sculpture and left the area in a white van.
We walked out to our front lawn yesterday morning, and it was gone.
Its owner, Murray Goldman, watched the entire thing unfold on his security camera. It was bolted to the ground. He remembers when the piece was created more than 30 years ago.
I looked at it and I put an inscription on it. I wrote, "Love will always make the world go round." Literally thousands of people have enjoyed it. I've had young couples do wedding photos there. Little children come and talk to the people. It's just been a wonderful experience.
Does it feel almost like a part of you is missing with a piece of your art gone?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I would be going once a year to the family and painted the apple red, refreshed it. It is part of me because every one of those sculptures are like my children.
The owner is offering a $5,000 reward for its safe return. But to him and the renowned artist, it's worth much more than that.
I now realize I'm depressed that somebody would just tear it up from its roots.
Because the piece is priceless. We cannot even put the price tag on the emotions, on the history.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
3 16-year-olds are charged after a shooting in Scarborough last night that sent 2 people to hospital with serious injuries.
It's extremely concerning that somebody at that age has gotten to the point where they think it's necessary, it's okay, not only to pick that gun up and possess it, but to use it so violently.
It happened outside a restaurant near Eglinton and Brinkley Road. Extra officers had already been patrolling the area due to recent gunfire. Police nearby heard the shots and arrived to see a vehicle taking off. They chased it and caught up to it on Highway 401. They found a handgun and a shotgun. The 3 teenagers are facing multiple charges. The 2 people shot, aged 17 and 20, are expected to survive. With the new school year starting soon, Toronto Public Health has identified more than 100 elementary schools at the highest risk for virus transmission. Families in those neighborhoods say they're facing fear and uncertainty about what lies ahead. Lauren Pelly spoke with some worried parents.
I think I'm ready for SK.
Melissa Henry's daughter Anissa might feel ready, but as a mom, Henry is worried about what the new school year will bring.
It's stressful. It is stressful because there's so many uncertainties.
Her daughter's new school near Jane and Finch has been ranked high risk for COVID-19 transmission. Henry says she never got that detail from the board or school.
Nobody's communicating with us. I genuinely do not know.
Rankings from Toronto Public Health show more than 100 elementary schools at the highest risk for virus transmission, including 80 in the public board and 36 in the Catholic board. Toronto's northwest corner features the most high-risk schools.
Pandemics like COVID-19 are like guided missiles that strike at people and target people who are living in poverty, and particularly people of color.
Staff at this food bank north of Jane and Finch saw that impact firsthand.
We actually started with about 35 families per week, and now we've served up to 280 in 1 week.
Belinda Afuda's family is one of them. The working mother of 3 had to stay home throughout much of the pandemic to care for her kids.
I think I'm ready to allow my kids back in class.
But she'll be keeping a close eye on the school safety measures.
I'll be watching out for like the number of students in class first and foremost. I mean, if you have a reduced number of students, the contacts amongst them will actually be reduced as much as possible.
Both the public and Catholic boards are working to protect students in high-risk areas, with measures ranging from smaller class sizes to better ventilation to plexiglass barriers. There's also money flowing in from the feds and province for personal protective equipment and extra staff. Those added protections are crucial since most parents in low-income communities can't opt to pull their kids out for homeschooling or learning pods.
It's
either send my kids to school or stay home and not work with them. You understand? And then not having any money to pay your bills.
Henry says she worries what will happen if Anissa gets sick, but she has no choice but to send her back to class.
I'm literally going on faith and trust.
No, monkey ball.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
It has been almost a month since Toronto and Peel entered stage 3 of the pandemic reopening plan. Enough time, experts say, to spot a trend in the number of new COVID-19 cases. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley looks at what's happening and why.
On the tables, they are specified 6 feet apart.
When Ontario allowed restaurants and bars to resume serving indoors, there were predictions that COVID cases would spike. 1 month later, with August drawing to a close, that hasn't happened.
Given the businesses that were reopening and the activities that we were allowing, I was expecting an increase, and we have seen an increase, but that increase has not been as rapid as I would have thought.
As recently as June, Ontario was averaging upwards of 200 new cases each day. Restrictions were loosened across nearly all the province by late July, yet since then there has not been a big surge.
To me, that seems like things are going relatively okay, that, there is a small rise, but certainly not this catastrophic rise that we've seen in certain places.
Places like the U.S. Take Illinois, for example, a similar population to Ontario, yet that state has had more new coronavirus cases in the past 2 days than this province has had all month.
Overall, Ontario is doing well. Not as good as we could be doing, but well.
Other hopeful signs? More than 700,000 COVID tests this month, less than 0.5% were positive. The number of patients hospitalized with the virus is way down, and there's been on average just 1 COVID-related death per day this month. So why has Ontario's reopening been, at least so far, a relative success? Summer weather has helped, since the risk of transmission is lowest outdoors. Experts say all those mandatory mask-wearing rules make a big difference, and credit goes to people for taking physical distancing seriously.
We are in stage 3 of reopening, but everybody is still behaving in general in a way that recognizes that COVID is still with us and that we still need to take precautions.
That was the theme from all the experts I spoke with. So far, so good, but Ontario mustn't let its guard down. And in the weeks to come, there are risks that infection numbers could surge again.
If we can't keep the schools open, this entire game is lost. Everything rides on whether schools can be opened up safely.
Schools start opening their doors in some parts of the province in less than 2 weeks. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The TTC laid off 450 employees this spring due to the financial hit of the pandemic. Now it's bringing back 150 of them. Chris Glover has more on the impact the return of these employees will have on the transit system.
Austin Jaffrey never likes what he sees when his bus shows up.
This 54 Lawrence bus, I've actually renamed it the 54 COVID East because it is packed all the time.
When the pandemic hit, ridership plummeted and the TTC laid off 450 workers. Now ridership is coming back and the TTC is bringing back 150 of those employees.
Only 150 operators, that's not enough. We need all the operators called back ASAP to ensure that there's some sort of distancing on the TTC. This is ridiculous. We need 100% of service and we need permanent provincial funding to achieve this.
Currently, the TTC is running up to 90% of its pre-COVID service. The Transit Authority says the return of these 150 employees will help them push that to just over 90%.
If we had 100% of our women and men back and operating at 100%, we wouldn't have the overcrowding. We wouldn't have those situations where people would be on edge and they would feel uneasy to take transit.
Right now, ridership is nearly 40% of normal. The TTC says only once ridership is up to 50% will they bring everybody back. But already today, they're lowering people's expectations of what that will look like.
The simple fact is that even with 100% of our service and 100% of our staff back, there are still going to be routes at certain times of day where physical distancing will not be possible.
What do you say to people then that hear that and don't want to take the service because they're afraid of getting the virus from cramped quarters?
Yeah, so I mean, the bottom line is the public transit is safe.
The TTC says no COVID outbreaks have been linked to public transit use. Plus, they've installed hand sanitizers, extensive cleaning, and mandatory mask use. Even though Jaffrey doesn't feel safe on the TTC, he says many people, particularly low-income people, have no choice but to risk it.
The TTC has normalized sardine cans. They have normalized this before COVID-19 was ever a thing.
The 150 employees are all operators, and most of them are bus drivers. The TTC says they're expected to get back onto the job starting on September 6th, and then they will monitor the service very carefully over the following 2 weeks to find out how riders respond, and then they'll determine when they're going to be bringing back the rest of the 300 employees who are still out of work. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, a concerning trend that has police on alert.
Here we go, they're setting up. And
there they go.
It literally drowns out our TVs. It's like having a Boeing 747 land in your bedroom.
Coming up, more on the dramatic jump in calls about stunt driving and what police are doing about it. Since the start of the pandemic, roads across the GTA have been quieter than usual. Better for motorists, but tempting for street racers. Police say there's been a big increase in stunt driving. Natalie Nanowski now with a look at how police are cracking down.
Okay, here we go. They're setting up. And
there you go.
What you're seeing is a street race captured by York Regional Police. And here's one we filmed in Peel. People ducking out seconds after we arrive. Street racing is up all across Ontario since the pandemic began. With less people on the road, those looking for a thrill are taking to the streets, and that's causing a lot of problems, especially for those living by major arteries.
It's like having a Boeing 747 land in your bedroom.
Through April and May and into June, we certainly were getting a lot of aggressive driving complaints, even throughout middays when you wouldn't normally have any open lanes to have that kind of speed achieved.
Toronto police gave out 443 stunt driving tickets between mid-March and June. That's a 357% increase from the same time last year. January and February started off quietly in Peel with a decrease in tickets. Then between March and August, a 26% increase. In July, York Region cracked down on stunt driving. That led to 20 charges and 13 arrests.
We've issued so many tickets since May, and we just hope the public is aware of what we're doing.
Often they're out patrolling parking lots, looking for large gatherings. These past few months, there's been some big seizures, expensive cars impounded.
parking spot. Let me just get the address.
Suspects tracked to their homes and arrested, motorbikes taken away. Stunt driving ranges from traveling 50 kilometers over the speed limit to racing or drifting in a parking lot. Now that traffic has picked back up in the GTA, stunt driving numbers are down a bit, but police are warning drivers if you're heading out to perform stunts, you could lose your license, lose your car, and you could face hefty fines. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
A cool evening in the GTA. Let's check on the weekend forecast with Colette. First, Colette, though, some extreme weather hitting Windsor all the way up to London.
Thanks, Marivelle. Well, boy, what a start to the day with the flooding, heavy rains in southwestern Ontario. By the early morning hours, there was already 60 millimeters of rain. By 8 a.m. in some parts of Windsor, Essex, about 100 millimeters of rain there. And yes, we're talking about a rainfall warning in place, but most of this through the evening hours, and we should be tapering off now as we go through the overnight. Now, in terms of what's going on here as we get into these areas of more of a light gray or light blue that you see here that extend through Hamilton, Waterloo, Wellington, and over towards the Niagara region, that's where we come into a special weather statement and not the rainfall warning. And that's because of what's coming through the overnight hours towards tomorrow morning. And there we're looking at more like 30 to 60 millimeters of rain. So that's more for tonight in terms of what will be falling. And then things will improve as we get towards tomorrow afternoon. We will be seeing lesser amounts of rainfall through the GTA where it's going to be more like 15 to 25 millimeters, highly kind of localized. Not everyone's actually going to even be seeing those kinds of amounts as this system kind of works its way through. It is tapping into some of that moisture. It's got that source of what was once Hurricane Laura. Daytime highs today, well, a little cooler around the lakeshore because of a southeasterly breeze. Yeah, so that kept the temperature down just a little bit. Some humidity. Most of the day, our humidex value is right around 26. So you can kind of see as the system is working its way through. I know it's mostly coming from the west of us, but as I say, it's tapping into some of that moisture, that tropical moisture from what was Laura. You can see as we go towards Saturday morning, we still have some activity, some of those embedded thunderstorms. That's where we get some of the heavier amounts localized with some of those storms. And then as we're going into the afternoon, we get into some clearing. It's with some of that sunshine. That's going to help us get our temperatures into the mid-20s. So highs around the GTA, 25, 26 degrees. Yes, the sun helps. And then we get some of these pop-up storms because of the instability in the atmosphere. So there'll be some isolated showers and thunderstorms coming back. I think most of Sunday is actually going to be sunny and dry. There'll be just into cottage country, a little instability there. So you could have a stray shower coming your way. Southwestern Ontario tonight, very important. Additionally, most of this over with, but additionally 15 to 25 millimeters. Again, we're kind of seeing things will be drying through the overnight, and then tomorrow afternoon the wind's a little bit breezy, and that's going to be kind of the trend we'll be seeing, not just here but into eastern Ontario too. Westerly winds then eventually turning kind of northwesterly. Tonight's temperatures just kind of steady there near 20 degrees, and then tomorrow it really depends how much sun we get in here as we kick this system out of here. That helps those temperatures to rise. The story going forward, a little bit cooler then into Sunday. Monday still a little cooler, a couple of degrees below seasonal, which is closer to 24. It doesn't last though. We go a couple of degrees above as we get towards midweek. Maribel.
Little break is all right. Thanks, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
A lot of us have probably exhausted our streaming services, watching movies to pass time while staying safe at home, but we're pretty sure you haven't seen this flick yet. Introducing the Toronto Zoo's version of Godzilla. Staff set up this miniature version of Toronto for their 17-year-old Komodo dragon, Killat, to stomp all over. The setup is part of the zoo's enrichment program. It aims to create opportunities for the animals to follow their natural instincts. Terrifying. That's our show for Unite. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend, everyone.